Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys a video that I actually have done before about a year ago. I did a video all about authors that I need to read more from. I will link that video up in the cards above. But today I specifically wanted to talk about romance authors that I have probably read one, maybe two of their books in the past, and I enjoyed them so much that I cannot wait to get to more of these authors' backlists. So first author we have is Lorraine Heath. So I read Once More My Darling Rogue by her earlier this year. That's essentially a Regency era reimagining of the film Overboard, if you are familiar with that one. And this was just so good because Lorraine Heath, I can already tell from just reading this one book, she is so good at writing angst and at writing these situations where it seems like the hero and the heroine cannot have a happily ever after. It just doesn't seem possible. But by the end of the book, there is a happily ever after, everything works out, and it's just so, so good. I haven't read a historical quite like this one, so I'm really excited to read more into her backlist. Although she definitely has quite the backlist. She's been writing probably since the 90s, so I'm not quite sure where to start. Maybe I'll read the other books in this series. I think there's two other books in this series. I think there's like the Hellions of Havisham series I've heard really good things about, so yes, I can't wait to explore more from Lorraine Heath. Another historical romance author that I am so excited about is Loretta Chase. So I have read two of her books. The first one that I read is Lord of Scoundrels, which is arguably her most popular book, and for very good reason. She actually wrote this in the early 90s. She's another author that has quite the backlist as well, and I love this just as much as everybody else does. But for some reason, people really only seem to read this one book by Loretta Chase when, like I said, like she has quite the backlist for sure. And so I actually read her most recent release, which is 10 Things I Hate About the Duke, earlier this year. I think this came out, I want to say in 2020, and I adored this book so much. I loved this more than Lord of Scoundrels. This is a fantastic Grump Sunshine trope where the heroine is more of the grump and the hero is like literally sunshine personified. Like that is how he is described. And as you can tell from the title, it's kind of a retelling of Taming of the Shrew or 10 Things I Hate About You. And it's just fantastic, and nobody ever talks about this book or has read this book, I feel like, but I highly, highly recommend it. Kind of like with Lorraine Heath, I'm not really sure where to start with her backlist. I think I'm just gonna kind of look up some random books on Goodreads, and whichever synopses sound good to me are the ones that I'll pick up. Next up, we have Penelope Douglas, who is an indie author that is definitely beloved on Romance Booktube and Booktube in general. I read and loved Punk 57 so much that I did buy myself a physical copy. This is kind of a bully romance. It's also an epistolary romance because the relationship between Ryan and Misha starts when they're a lot younger and they're writing letters to one another. I am looking forward to reading Misconduct, which I think is a romance between like a parent and a teacher. And then I think I might check out Credence. I know that that book is pretty wild. If you don't know anything about this book, it's kind of like a reverse harem between this girl and like her step uncle and his sons. So yeah, it's pretty bonkers for sure, but I mean, I love Jessica Kane, who writes the most insane novellas ever, so I might enjoy this one. We will just have to see, but those are definitely the two books on my radar. I'm not really interested in her Devil's Night series or that series, the first book is called Bully, I think. Those series don't really interest me, but the two books that I just mentioned definitely do. Next up, we have Mia Sheridan. So earlier this year, I read Archer's Voice, which is arguably her most popular book, and for very, very, very good reason. Needless to say, this is one of my top 10 romances that I've read in 2021. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a small town romance with a virgin hero who is also mute. It's just everything. I could talk about this book for hours and hours, but I'm just going to stop. But Mia Sheridan has quite the backlist for sure. One of the books that I'm interested in is Becoming Calder, which is book one in a series by her. It sounds like this series centers around characters that are escaping a cult. I believe, and these books are on Kindle Unlimited, by the way. Not all of her books are, at least I don't think, but this series definitely is, so really looking forward to checking out this one soon. And I also have a physical copy of Most of All You, which is a book that I heard about from Brie from In Love and Words. She's actually the booktuber that I heard about Archer's voice from. But this plot sounds a little bit similar to Archer's voice. Like, there's kind of similar vibes that I get from reading the synopsis. But all that I can tell you is that it's about this woman, Crystal. I believe she is a stripper. And then Gabriel, it sounds like he's very shy, very introverted. And so he goes to her and asks her to help him feel more comfortable around women, essentially. And I've just heard nothing but fantastic things about this one from the booktubers that I follow that have read it. Next up, we have Saffron A. Kent. So the one book by her that I have read is The Unrequited, which is definitely a darker romance between this woman and her college professor. There is also cheating involved because he is married. Yeah, this is definitely not a light and fluffy read. This is like the perfect book for sad white girls who love Lana Del Rey. I think Chandler Ainsley described this book as that on her Goodreads review, and I just wholeheartedly agree. But this was fantastic. I love Saffron A. Kent's writing. That's what I remember the most vividly from reading this book. So the one book in particular that I'm looking forward to is, I believe it's The Medicine Man, which is a romance between this woman and I think her psychiatrist or psychologist. I'm not really sure. So as you can tell, she tends to write kind of taboo elements into her romances, but her writing is just so good that I can't wait to read more from her. Next up, we have Erin McClellan. So I have read 2 novellas by her at this point. The first one that I read was Stocking Stuffers, which is book 1 in her So Over the Holiday series. She tends to write novellas. And then I have also read Bottle Rocket, which is book 3 in this same novella series. So I adore Erin McClellan for many things, but one of the things I love is how creative her spicy scenes are, because she loves to use toys in her scenes, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. Also tends to write LGBTQIA+ romances. Bottle Rocket had 2 bisexual main characters. And Stocking Stuffers, I believe the heroine was bisexual. She also tends to write quite a few male-male romances, which I'm looking forward to checking out. And yeah, I feel like she just has a unique voice in the romance genre, and so I'm just really excited to read more from her. Next up, we have another historical romance author. This is Courtney Milan. So I read The Duke Who Didn't, which is, I believe, her most recent release earlier this year for one of the historical romance readathon. I highly recommend this romance, by the way, if you are looking for more diversity in your historical romances, because both main characters are Chinese. Also, we have a virgin hero in this romance, and it's a pretty low angst romance as well. It was just so good. I've also read one of her novellas. She's written quite a few historical romance novellas. She also has some contemporaries, one in particular that I really want to read. I think it's called Hold Me, and one of the main characters is trans, and I just heard nothing but phenomenal things about that one. One of the historicals that I really want to read by her is Unclaimed, I believe, and that one, I think the heroine is a prostitute or a courtesan. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about most of her historical romances, so yeah, I'm just really excited to dive more into her backlist for sure. So then next up we have Lauren Rowe. So Lauren Rowe is one of Brie's absolute favorite romance authors. Brie from In Love and Words, by the way. I know I tend to mention the same booktubers like all the time in my videos. Sorry, not sorry. I just tend to gravitate to the same people when I'm watching booktube. So I have read Misadventures of a College Girl by Lauren Rowe, and something that I really enjoyed about this book is Lauren Rowe's unique voice in her writing. I also love that she narrates her own audiobooks. I think that that's really cool. And there's just a unique sense of humor as well to her stories and to her writing, and so I'm really excited to check out, I think it's her Morgan Brothers series. It sounds like most of her books are kind of interconnected. They take place in the same world, essentially. And so it sounds like you should really start with the Morgan Brothers if you're going to dive into her backlist, but she has quite the backlist for sure as well. I know she recently came out with a new duet that has gotten some really great reviews as well. Next up is another absolute favorite author of Bree's, and that is Brittany C. Cherry. So I have read The Gravity of Us. I read this a few months ago, actually for a reading vlog that I did where I read some of Bree's absolute favorite romances. So I will link that vlog up in the cards above. And this book is just as amazing as everybody says it is. It's like the epitome of a Grump Sunshine trope. I'm really excited to read the other, I think there's 3 other books in this series, and then another book that I'm really looking forward to is Behind the Bars. This one, I believe, is a romance that starts out when the hero and the heroine are in high school, and I think they go to like a performing arts high school, which is so cool because I went to a performing arts high school. There's also Eleanor and Gray, which I know is a really popular book by her. I have quite a few of her books on my TBR, so I just need to get cracking and read a few of them. Then let's see, next up I have Rebecca Weatherspoon. So I read Zenny by her a few months ago, and this is just so good. It's a marriage of convenience. I think both main characters are bisexual. There's actually a lot of fun times in this book involving toys, by the way. So I've heard a lot of good things about a lot of her books, but the series in particular that I'm really looking forward to is her Beards and Bondage series. The first book in that is Haven. I already have this book on my Kindle. I bought it probably over a year ago at this point, so I just need to read it. Next up we have Katrina Jackson. So I have read Beautiful and Dirty, which is a novella. It's book 1 in her The Family series, which is a mafia romance series. That was a really great novella. I gave it 4 stars, but I was not a fan of the fact that there's no happily ever after. There's a cliffhanger thing going on, and book 2 of the series is out, but it's not about the couple that book 1 was about. So I'm like anxiously awaiting the release of the continuation of the hero and the heroine story from this novella. But I've heard really great things about her, what is it called, Private Eye. I think she's written like a whole series of, I believe, novellas that center around spies. Another novella that I've heard awesome things about is Neighborly, which is a poly romance. That one sounds really, really great as well. Another novella author is Christina C. Jones. So I read Maybe Next Time, which is a marriage and trouble story where the husband kidnaps his wife to make her talk to him about why she wants to divorce him. So there's that. I definitely want to read the other novellas in this Vegas Night series. I know that Jess actually did an entire guide to Christina C. Jones on her channel. I'm gonna link that video up in the cards above. I actually still need to watch that video to get more of a sense of what direction I want to go in terms of what other novellas I pick up by Christina C. Jones, but I've heard nothing but great things about like her entire backlist. So that's really cool. Some of her books are on Kindle Unlimited, and I think the same is true for Katrina Jackson. Actually, a lot of these authors are on Kindle Unlimited, I think. Next one we have is Kira Andrews, another Kindle Unlimited author. I read Kidnapped by the Pirate by her, which I believe is her only historical romance, but this is a fantastic male pirate historical romance. Just so good. I read this for the most recent round of the historical romance readathon, and she typically writes more contemporary romances, and they all seem to be male romances. I'm just really excited to check out more of her work as well. And then we have Lenora Bell. So I actually read Love is a Rogue by her a couple of weeks ago, again for that recent round of the historical romance readathon. I actually gave that book 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. It just wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. I really hoped that I would love that book more. And so I actually have a physical copy of How the Duke Was Won by her, which is one of her backlist titles. This is book 1 in the Disgraceful Duke series, and this is like The Bachelor meets Regency era romance. So that sounds really good. I think this is definitely her most popular book, so hopefully I enjoy this one. I really am hoping that Lenora Bell will be a new favorite historical romance author for me. Next up we have Sierra Simone. So the only book that I have read by her is Porn Star, which is a book that she co-wrote with Laurelyn Page, and in particular I'm really looking forward to reading A Lesson in Thorns, which is essentially a poly romance series. I think there's 4 books total in this series. From what I understand though, book 1 is the best of the series, so I might just read book 1 and leave it at that, although I think this book ends maybe on a cliffhanger. we'll just have to see. I'm also really interested in reading Priest, which is a romance about a priest, and then Sinner, which I think is a romance where the heroine is preparing to be a nun. So that sounds really interesting. It sounds like she writes a lot of taboo romances for sure. All right, guys, that's going to be it for romance authors that I cannot wait to read more from. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would also love it if you would leave a comment down below if you have read from any of these authors, and if you have any favorite books of theirs. I would love it if you would share that with me. And with that being said, I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!